I sat down with these 8 event owners and/or managers to find out if they all think the same. I said 6 statements and had each of them move a certain distance regarding how much they agree or disagree, and then asked each person why. I do want to clarify that each answer is purely opinionated, as well as the fact that this video was recorded early January, and none of the statements are my direct fault, but the idea was to make more open statements in order to get mixed answers and truly dwell into different event owners' minds. With that being said, I enjoy being an event owner.
Whoa, that's a good question. I could say the very stereotypical answer of I love meeting creators. And yes, being an event owner is awesome because you get this very, very niche opportunity that you get to meet so many different talented creators from so many different parts of the Minecraft community. And it's great getting to know everyone, especially with Buy and Batter. We do 2 separate events. We do a main roster event and a mini event. And the mini event I found is far more interesting because you get to know smaller creators that you wouldn't have necessarily met before. The bigger ones are obviously they're big creators that everyone's heard of. And to some extent, it's great meeting those as well. But I genuinely find it more interesting socializing with those sort of smaller creators who are just starting content creation, seeing their sort of perspective in the event scene and then getting to know them is really, really rewarding. On the other hand, I develop a lot of my event and it's just been a passion project of mine. It wasn't something that I initially started off thinking, oh yes, I'm going to go into coding this event immediately. It was actually a school project that I started just trying to learn Java. And then that transitioned onto, wow, this is actually a lot more potential than I initially expected. So then that's when I started bringing on a team and we all started working on it together and everyone in the team is so passionate about it. It's really rewarding when the creators come back saying, I had a fun time. So yeah, it's fun. It's fun. I think that's a pretty simple answer. And I'd be surprised if anyone says strongly disagree, but it's a really fun role to have.
Now, there are the stresses with being an event owner, and I definitely understand that. But there is the passion behind it, and there's all the enjoyment you get from seeing so many people enjoy what you do and enjoy all your efforts because you put so much time into a project. Being able to spend even those few hours with people, with all that time that you put into it, that you put into a project, it's quite a magical experience. And it's a feeling that is pretty hard to replicate. And yeah.
Well, I mean, there's really no negatives there. Like, okay, I once thought of becoming a YouTuber, but it just wasn't for me. Like, I don't have this same kind of motivation to consistently put work in a YouTube channel like some crazy people do. That's not crazy, like as a negative thing, by the way. It's a lot of effort that goes into that stuff. But event owning is a lot more chill because you have like weeks to prepare for an event, and you make your own schedules basically. And even if something goes wrong, you can usually just try again later. So there's like way less stress and you have a nice community to back you up. Even if you do something wrong, you can probably just go on a break for like a few weeks and then just come back better than ever.
Being a Minecraft event owner is pretty nice, and you get like there's a lot of fun things and hosting events for other people, and it feels really nice. But it can't be strongly agreed because at times it does get very stressful, especially when things go wrong. If my event probably wasn't as good as it was, I probably would have to say neutral or disagree potentially. But I'm now very confident, so I will have to go with a middle ground, agree. So I think the event is pretty fun to host, and I think it's pretty fun for everyone to play, but it is sometimes a little bit stressful.
It's really fun to work on and create an event with a lot of other creative people and see it get played out by players and see the reactions from the community, the fans, everyone who gets to engage with it. But there's also a lot of stress. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of anxiety about how things will go. And there's a lot of things outside of your control. And so even as you try to prepare for every situation, you still have to acknowledge that there are some things you won't be able to control. And when any of those things happen, it just makes the experience very frustrating at times.
Well, the thing with like being an event organizer to me is like the control and having the creative liberty to kind of decide how an event goes is really fun. I'm sure there's been plenty of people who, have had ideas for events but aren't in the position to do them, and I am in the position to do them, which I really enjoy. However, on the flip side, sometimes there's moments where people don't understand how events go and they'll have criticism that doesn't really make sense, but I can't explain to them how it like makes sense without revealing things that I'm not allowed to reveal. And that sometimes results in slight toxicity in terms of like the audience and how they respond to certain changes or certain decisions or certain results. And that's sometimes a little bit tough to deal with. Additionally, another like slight negative thing is that it can be very stressful to have to put an event together, especially in terms of managing players, because you can't really predict who will be available when, and reaching out to people can sometimes be a little exhausting, and some people will respond, some people won't respond, which isn't always the most fun thing. There's highlights to it, but that's why I'm like, overall, I enjoy this, but there's moments where I'm just like, a little bit iffy about it.
I think there's a lot of ups and downs when it comes to being an event owner. Like, obviously, in my perspective, I have to very much plan ahead. And in the space that we are in right now, there's like a lot of events. So you have to also make sure that you're not kind of doing the same thing as other people, being unique and making sure it's actually good for players to do. So I think that's like the stressful part. But then like seeing it finished and done, it's like very rewarding. You have a very rewarding feeling. So after, like, for example, a Mania finishes and the event's finished, I feel so relieved, so happy because it went well and everything, and everyone enjoyed it.
Team making has become increasingly harder.
Well, okay, I'm a little hesitant about this because, like, I don't do the teams. We have a team maker or multiple team makers that do the teams for me, so they would be the best people to actually answer this question. But from what I've heard, it's just the rosters they're just full of like really good players nowadays. Like we've recently gotten a bunch of like weaker players and people newer to the event scene, but at least in the past we've had a lot of like difficulties with balancing teams since there's just so many good players nowadays.
I feel like there's just, in my opinion, I feel like everyone's skill, or at least with specifically the Mania roster, has, if I'm like, you imagine a chart, it's just gone up rather than like stayed in the same place because people are progressively like improving. So when it comes to like balancing out, it is incredibly hard. Then you also have to look at checklists, and some people, they have to respect certain things with a checklist. Thankfully, I have people who help me out, because if I did it all by myself, I have no idea how I would manage, because I do think it's getting increasingly hard with just the uprising in skill. Example, now the speedrunning thing has become such a trend, and before that, the parkour. It just helps improve players, and people just keep getting better, and it will definitely change the scale of team balancing as a whole.
Now, for me, it's quite difficult because I don't involve myself with team making much, and maybe that says something about how team making has changed over the years. And it's because over time, you've always got to keep track of who's friends with who, and like maybe who would work better with who. And at the end of the day, you want everyone to be happy. And there are some situations where you can't let that happen, or you might have to make some really tough decisions. And I'm lucky that I've got a team of people behind me, so I don't have to stress about that as much as I think I maybe should. But yeah.
So I don't really do team making myself, but from what I understand from especially like Master Garf, Danny, as well as a few others in testing, it is kind of gotten easier, but it's also gotten harder in different ways. I think that it's gotten easier in terms of balance a little bit, because at the very start, you don't really know what everyone plays, but now we have like, even in testing, we kind of just balance based on vibes now rather than actual stats, because we kind of just know how everyone's going to play. But especially keeping it to the real event, it is kind of the same story here, where it's like a lot easier to balance based on vibes, but it is getting harder in a different way, in that a lot of teams, we want to keep them interesting, and then it's getting harder to make interesting teams. So while it is easier to balance, it is harder to make interesting teams, so that's why I'm going to have to go with a neutral answer.
I would like to start off saying that I've been in the event scene for a couple months. Bayern Battle's been around for about 5-6 months at the time of recording. So I haven't really had a lot of experience when it comes to long-term sort of player management. I know we've got a whole team that does it now, and we go through a pretty long process to make sure that all of our teams are somewhat balanced. But initially, the first Bayern Battle, we literally just put people together because we thought they'd get along together. It was a horribly unbalanced event, but at the end of the day, it was a fun event. And I think as an event owner, you want to make fun events. Ultimately, you could put people together that might not necessarily lead to balance. And I guess that's the sort of where we see ourselves going in the future. But we ultimately want to have an event that the creators have fun. And if you're put in a team with people that you don't necessarily have fun with, it's not going to be a fun event for anyone. And whether or not it's gotten more difficult over time, I think for us, we've put a lot more planning into our sort of player management. And through that planning, it's a much easier system. I can't really go into too much depth about how exactly we put players together, but I can say we have a rating for every player in our roster. And we obviously wouldn't want to put several high tier players together. It's pretty simple. But we'd also want to group players together that somewhat get along well together. And when you have a roster of so many different creators, yes, it is challenging. But as long as you sort of plan out the rostering beforehand and don't go in completely blind, I don't think player management is too difficult.
I feel like team balancing, a lot of the discourse and things about it now is all about balancing. How do you make teams balanced? How do you make it so there's new combinations? How do you do all these things that are very difficult to check all of these boxes with the player roster you have and number of signups you have? But I think those are looking at the wrong things for what makes an event fun. I think a lot of the struggle about this is that there's very similar player pools across events. And so instead trying to find an event's own identity and then making teams in line with that identity is actually kind of easy because you know what you want it to be, you know what you want it to look like, and you know why it will stand out and why it'll be fun.
I think the further events develop, and especially for me personally with blockers, the more the event has grown, there's more options in terms of who can be teamed together, and there's less repetition that's required within team making, which for me just kind of has like a wide open door in terms of which combos could be exciting for people to see maybe for the first time or as like a throwback. And with how established blockers is, at least, it's become just infinitely easier to make the teams. The difficulty, and I don't know if this would be included, with team making potentially is the actual outreach towards players. Sometimes signups will be very high, sometimes signups will be very low, and that can affect how team making works. But with how I approach the event and how my team making partner Anthos approaches things, we are not too worried about like messaging 5 people to sign up or something along those lines. So relatively confident in team making overall, and I don't really ever feel like we are running into like a roadblock that makes team making extremely difficult.
Having a big staff team is crucial to an event's success.
So I have the unique perspective in that part of Block Wars, which is a very big staff team of 26 plus people at this point. And then for KST, which is a staff team now, it's just made it up to 9, but previously was sitting at only like 5. And the thing I noticed for each of them is that more staff means more things can get done, but also the more organizational things you need in place to keep everyone productive and working and making sure everybody's on the same page for what you want to happen, which allows you to spread out the work a lot better and allows no one person to get burnt out. But it also just creates a lot of logistical issues and a lot of trying to follow up with people and make sure all the things are getting done. Whereas with like a small team, if like it's 1 to 2 developers, a builder or so, an organizer, whatever that is, whatever else you need, it is much quicker to instead work as that small team and kind of make the ideas come to life a lot quicker and smoother without all the need of the excessive amount of meetings or coordination between everyone.
If you have like a team of only like 1 or 2 people, it is kind of nice in a way to be able to develop everything yourself because you bake it in your own vision, which is how we were based on the very, very old event, or was really only 2 or 3 people working on it. Working on Pandora's Box now with a larger group of maybe like 10 to 15 people, it is a lot easier to work with, and it is crucial, I think, to our success to have that many builders. But I can't strongly agree because having a massive group of a lot of people leads to a lot of people kind of like assuming that the rest will carry and like not really doing anything. It's like if you have a group project of like 10 people in school, like that's really obsessive and you're kind of just not going to do anything, assume the others are going to carry you. So I don't think you want to have like a massive group, but you want to still have a large group to be successful. You just need to be careful though to make it not too large, which is why I can't strongly agree.
I think it definitely depends on the way you want to take the event. If, for example, you're running an event which is very small and it's just for your friends, you shouldn't have that pressure to think, for my event to be good or for my event to be fun, I need a big staff team, or I need to be able to make these huge builds or code these massive projects, because maybe that's unrealistic, or maybe that's not what you want, or maybe that will just take the fun out of it entirely. In my case, the Mayhem staff team, I wouldn't say is that big. And we do make big projects, and we do try to make our games the best we can, but we don't try to overstretch ourselves or oversaturate a certain team. So yeah, I'm in the middle ground, mostly because I think that it really depends in that sense.
Having a large staff team, I don't think is required, but it can have a lot of positives and some negatives. You can make a lot happen and work with a small group of people. In my opinion, small group is like, let's say like 6 active staff members, maybe like a few inactive ones. However, obviously having a lot of people could be very helpful if you are an event that does it entirely out of passion, or maybe just doesn't have the resources to, get a very talented person to do like 3 people's worth of work. Then having more people could be very beneficial. But I don't think it's ever like a strict requirement to have more than like 10 people in your staff team if you get the right people, which from my perspective, the Blockware staff team is quite large. However, if it really came down to it, we'd only need a handful of people working at relatively high efficiency and with a decent amount of time to make the event happen. We don't necessarily need to have, let's say, 20 people, but it helps.
I'd say I disagree with it because it's usually just as difficult to host an event with like less people than it is to host an event with like multiple people working on it day and night and stuff like that. Just because like when you're alone, when you're working stuff, you don't have to do any communication between your staff members, which is, at least for an introvert like me, it's way easier than to communicate with your staff like a lot. It just becomes like a really big mess of organization and stuff.
I do think that having a well amount of people in the staff team could help and benefit because splitting up things would be much, much easier. But on the other hand, I feel like if the staff team is like more dwindled in numbers and everyone works remotely close with each other, I think it's just as efficient. Because I think when it comes to making an event, you don't need like a big staff team. I think just having a team that is very well rounded and very good at working together is just as strong enough. But obviously, both have their benefits and both have their, disadvantages. Maybe when you have a larger staff team, you have people who might be doing less and maybe get confused as to like what they have to do next, rather than like when it's like a smaller team, basically everyone has like a task and everyone worked together on that task. Especially like with Mania, I would say we were pretty much a very remotely close staff team. We're very small compared to other events, and we kind of try to work together because it's easier for us.
I think ultimately, if you have staff that are passionate about the project, I think managing it becomes a lot easier. I think there's a lot more strength in having one really good and passionate developer, for example, against 5 or 6 sort of new developers who are just coming into the scene, don't really know what they're doing. And I can only really talk from experience. I know when we initially created our staff team, we sort of oversubscribed people because none of us really had that sort of knowledge on people's skills in the scene. And through time, we've been able to sort of cut it down and get the sort of 3 or 4 people per role who are really passionate and are good at that role. And then we can create a good event from that. I think for the first buy-in battle, it was literally just me and Ben, my other developer, who were coding the whole thing. And that's a lot of work for us. But ultimately, if you have people who somewhat know what they're doing and can keep everything clean, it's a lot of work, yes, still. But I think at the end of the day, it's Minecraft. It's not a proper business and it's a fun event. And realistically, you don't need a massive staff team for that.
Minecraft events will still be thriving in 5 years.
I do think that it's possible that Minecraft events could possibly die out, but I do still think that there will be a group of people who will stick around. It's just that we might not be seeing the same events that we see today. Like Pandora's Box, I mean, I'm 22, I could still be running it at 27. I could totally see that being possible. And I do think that people, sometimes people leave events, but new people will come in eventually. And I do think that a good number of events have staff that are willing to stick around for as long as possible, especially when you have 16 and 17-year-olds who are like very common like developers now. They could very well still be going strong at 22 and 23 potentially. So you do see, I think, a lot of events who will still have players and still have developers to run them, as well as we'll be seeing different events as well. Like maybe some new events will pop up, especially with how often new ones are coming up. That being said, it's very hesitant to say strongly agree because I don't know if the current events that we see right now, like MCC, Pandora's Box, Block Wars, I don't know if it will be sticking around that much longer. But I do think that some events will still be very strong in 5 years, even if they aren't the same as we see them now.
I think that for events overall, particularly in Minecraft. The word event can mean so many different things, whether it's your 100-player civilization kind of event, whether it's your block war style event, whether it's, some other kind of event. They're all kind of fall under this umbrella. And as long as even like Minecraft is semi-popular, which it kind of has to be because its player base is so big, that 5 years from now, we'll be able to make cooler, new stuff. It'll be very different, very far removed from probably what we're doing now, but I think they'll still classify under Minecraft events, and I think they'll still be doing well because Minecraft as a game is functionally a sandbox, and as long as there are people playing it, there are going to be people willing to make cool things in it.
I think Minecraft as a whole is a game that's not ever going to die. I think there'll always be an audience for Minecraft content. I can't really predict the sort of event space that is going to be in about 5 years, and if I could do that, I'd have the best event in the scene, quite literally. And it's a constantly changing space. From experience, the thing that I've put a lot of focus into Biome Battle is keeping up to date. And I think that's one of our strengths as an event, is we're a pretty modern event, as we built it on a modern version of Minecraft, so we can use stuff like attributes, which is crazy. You can make people change their size, you can change their gravity. It's great. And that allows us to be a sort of modern event. If you look at other events, they may run on an old code base, and that would sort of restrict them in keeping up to date with the event scene. And I think realistically, it's going to be those events that keep up to date with Minecraft as a whole, which are going to stick around. I don't think all of the events that are currently around will be sort of big in 5 or so years. I'd be surprised. I think ultimately a lot of people right now are concerned that Minecraft is going down in popularity. And yes, we've seen it before, but I'm optimistic. I think we're going to have another rise in popularity and Minecraft is going to be all popular again. And I'd love to say that's going to happen. But say we're looking from a pessimistic point of view, I realistically don't think Minecraft is going to die in 5 years. And I still think there's going to be sort of passion and interest in Minecraft event content. I think another interesting point is the sort of oversaturation of Minecraft events. And I do see that to a certain extent, but a lot of the voices who are saying there's a lot of oversaturation in the event scene are involved in a lot of smaller events. And if you look at really the sort of big 5 Minecraft events at the moment, those really haven't changed in the past couple of years. And I'd be surprised if that changes, maybe a couple newcomers. But realistically, the biggest events aren't going to change in the sort of upcoming future. Maybe there's going to be a lot of smaller events, but ultimately the event scene is still going to be incredibly popular.
I think there is always something new for Minecraft events, and we will keep coming up with ideas, and we will keep coming up with new concepts. I think, as of right now, while the community's in a state where we keep saying, oh, the event community's oversaturated, or there's too much going on at once, or there's not much new happening, but if you look deeper, you will see that there is a lot of new stuff coming out, and I think the fact that the event community has been very strong for probably about like 5 years now, I think that says something. And in the same way that Minecraft doesn't get as stale as other games, I think events can have a similar longevity.
I'm not going to pretend like I know the answer. There's no way I could ever know that. Like, I don't even know if Minecraft's going to be here in 5 years. Or it's had a resurrection like 5 years ago, but I don't know if it's going to do that again. I feel like it just depends if people still like the game, I guess. And I mean, people do grow old and have families. It's not guaranteed that Minecraft will last 5 years. And even if it does, there's probably hopefully been a lot of updates to Minecraft. Maybe there's some other more popular stuff. Maybe events become too repetitive. There's just too many variables and there's no way to deduce a correct answer.
Well, essentially, 5 years from now is like double the lifespan of the modern day Minecraft event scene, which essentially means that you'd have to predict what's happening. So I have absolutely no idea whether it's going to be thriving or completely dead in 5 years. Essentially, I think, in my opinion, what it relies on is either a consistent interest from a whole array of, Minecraft YouTubers, streamers, whatever, audience plays in these events. But it could also maybe have a sudden rise in popularity if there is a rise in popularity for Minecraft. We saw a massive boom in popularity roughly 5-6 years ago, right before the Minecraft event scene really started to become more active, etc. And you see with the past 5 years of events like MCC, they used to have so much more activity and now things have slowed down. But they've slowed down in a way where, like, from a community standpoint, things are as active and as thriving as they used to be 5 years ago. But from a popularity standpoint, they are not. So it's very hard to predict how that interest and that popularity will continue in double the lifespan that we have now lived throughout Minecraft events, because it is a prediction. 5 years ahead from now, we could see the popularity go from nothing to a lot, or from nothing to even more nothing, or we could see the interest decline a lot, or we could see the interest expand, increase. We don't really know. I think ultimately, if I had to put a prediction on this, it would be slightly in favor of it thriving, because I think there's always going to be that audience of creative people that want to make something that is really cool for people to come together in a Minecraft event setting. Maybe something unique, maybe something what we have now, but just with a slightly different coat of paint to make it stand out slightly in a way that's slightly more unique. However, ultimately, it's something that we can never predict. It's just something where we have to cross our fingers and hope that it'll be thriving in 5 years. But I'm optimistic that it might. That's why I'm neutral.
Okay, this is from my perspective. I feel like every year there's just 10 new events, and they all seem to be kind of like the same thing or the same format. So unless the events change for the better, well, actually not for the better, because I feel like every event's the same, but like if they change for every event having like a different format, I think it could very much remain. But then you see new trends uprising with SMPs have been there from like day one, and they're still strong to today. I see a lot of RPG SMPs and like role playing, which was popular and kind of died down and became popular. And then you have obviously who stream parkour and just like rank stuff like that could be more popular than a Minecraft event in 5 years' time. New trends could come around. So I do not think that Minecraft events will be around in 5 years. I feel like even the generation that plays Minecraft events right now will kind of grow up and kind of maybe drift away. This is all from my perspective as well. I don't really see myself playing Minecraft events in 5 years, unless in 5 years I go back to this video and I am playing in Minecraft events, which might be a bit embarrassing.
I'm satisfied with how my event is doing right now.
I think it says a lot that after a mayhem, I can, late at night, go in bed, maybe sit on my phone, scroll through Twitter, and it's just either highlights or people saying, I had fun in this event today, or people saying that POVs they recommend watching for VODs. That is like very heartwarming, and the fact that people have that kind of love for my event is very warming and inspiring to me. The community is definitely what has kept me going for so long. I'm also just like proud of myself in the sense that we've been able to birth so many good moments, so many memorable games like Factory or like Multispleef, and that we've been able to grow not only a strong viewer base but a strong player base with amazing people that support us as much as they can, give us feedback, say what they enjoy. It's amazing. I love the success of Mayhem.
Well, okie dokie. I think I'm in an incredibly fortunate position where I can say, I've made Buy and Battle. I own Buy and Battle. Half a year ago, nobody would have heard of that name because it didn't exist. And I think right now, it's something that there's a lot of people in the event scene that would be like, wow, I wish I could have an event as big as Buy and Battle. Not to sell myself out, but I'm really proud of what myself and the team have been able to achieve in such a short amount of time, because realistically, it's pretty unheard of at the moment, especially for a new event to have the sort of growth that we've had. And I think if I'm to sit here and say, I'm not particularly satisfied with what we've done, that would be straight up lying. I am very, very happy with what we've achieved and incredibly grateful to the community that we've been able to build, because everyone that I've spoken to is just passionate about the event. And that's a great feeling to have. And we've still got ideas. We've got loads of ideas that we want to be able to do, but that just comes with time. And I'm really excited to see what 2025 has to offer, especially with some of the stuff that I've got written down is going to be really exciting without leaking anything. But yeah, I've got some cool stuff coming soon.
For Blockwars, at least, we're moving in to the later half of Series 3, and everything is kind of running smoothly. We have the ideas, we have the team, we have all the people working together well, and it's just exciting to see all the new players that get to play and all the new content we get to release and the reactions to that. And then for KST side of things, the only reason I'm not more strongly agreeing is we're kind of trying to work on our roadmap towards Season 2 of KST and what that'll look like and why it'll be different for other events. And so while we have like a good idea, some good concepts, there's still a lot of things to be ironed out. By the time we come back, I think Knights of the Square Table will be a very cool, very thematic, very story-driven event that will stand out from all the other ones.
I think the Pandora's Box is in a very great state right now. It's been very much praised, and even in the feedback chat, most of the things we see in the feedback chats now are actually really minor, and like small stuff like jumping mad streaks have been a hot take of discussion recently. Survival points are also kind of a discussion, but we already have a pretty strong stance on that, so we're probably not going to be adjusting that anytime soon. And the rest of the feedback is really just smaller changes. most of the things are actually really good about Pandora's Box. I can't strongly agree because we do want to make room for much better changes in the future. And we are hoping that with the break that was recently announced that we can essentially hopefully get to that strongly agree point and be very satisfied with how the event is. Like, all the games are pretty good that we have. All the maps we have are pretty good or can be easily improved or replaced if needed. And I think we have the staff team to make the event perfect. It's just going to take some bit of time. But as of right now of January, I gotta have to say middle ground agree, as I'm still very confident. But I do think we have room for improvement.
So my event, Blissful Championship, so far has been like really community focused. We have like a separate event just for the community who anyone can apply to, by the way. Wait, are you gonna put a link in the description?
Sure.
Let's go, free advertisement. I love this. But yeah, I'm happy with how big of a community we've managed to create here. It's very tight. We have a lot of smaller communities inside of the community that even I hang with. It's pretty fun. It's probably over 100 friends, something like that. Like a bunch of people who I talk to daily. It's been great. But on the other hand, it can always be better. For the actual polishing and game side of the event, it's gone well. I feel like we have a lot of like unique concepts that other events don't have. We also have like one of the biggest build teams, I think, and some of the greatest build quality. Not to brag, we're kind of lacking in the polishing side a little. I do have to admit, I feel like we could do a bunch of things better there. Over time, we are going to improve, but I don't think it's ever going to be perfect. And I don't think we're nearly at the level of quality that I want us to be at right now. Like, I can only truly be proud of something when it's near perfection. Maybe that's just the perfectionist behind me. Like, I feel like a lot of people have a way lower criteria and are happy easier than I am. It's an issue with my personality for sure. But I am still happy of what we've accomplished with the community and everything.
I wouldn't say like that my events, creme de la creme, the Minecraft events, obviously, because there's so many great events out there. Just name some: Block Wars, Biome Battle, Mayhem, MCC, of course. That's just like the staple part. Pandora's Box. There's just so many good events out there. So we're kind of like not out there, or that's how I would see it. And I personally think that kind of around summer 2024 and shifting over to like the autumn times, Mania kind of felt like it was dying a bit. And I felt like the roster's perspective, from my perspective, from the staff team's perspective. However, now things have changed. Plans have been put in, building has begun, developing has begun. And I feel like if we keep on this right track, then I think I'll be very, very happy with what I come up with when Mania comes back later on this year.
I think Block Horse in itself has been doing really well over the past year or two and has been consistently and steadily improving and becoming more popular, solidifying itself more and more. However, I think there is a lot that still can be done. There's elements of the event that I think are currently in a state where if we don't really touch things up properly, they will become a little bit lackluster. They might fall behind on the modern standard that will be set up for events that I predict to become more and more a thing in 2025. And there's things that we still need to actively put our heart and effort into for them to become better and better going forward in 2025, 2026, and whatever comes beyond. I think there's a lot of room for improvement, like mentioned. There's also a lot of people that I would still like to get involved. There's people I would like to get more actively involved. And that's why I'm, not in full strength going to be like, yes, my event is doing the best it can be. No, there's a lot that still can be done. And I will say that I am happy with where we're at right now, but there's always more room to improve.
The event scene has become oversaturated.
I've had like the blessing and, honor to be both an event player and an event owner. I can see it from like both sides. As an event owner, I feel like it comes really hard for you to come up with something really new, because I feel like there's so many Minecraft events out there that have done mainly everything that kind of sit on the path of a Minecraft event and like haven't deviated away from that. So I feel like lots of the things have been done, and I feel like it's going to be really, really hard for a Minecraft event to come up with something really unique. If they do, huge props to them. And yeah, as an event player, I feel like the events have become way too competitive from my perspective, and I feel like that kind of might kill it in some ways. And again, this is all from my perspective, as I do not like the competitive aspect of Minecraft events, as they can get really stressful. But yeah, circling back to the question, I do feel like it's getting a bit too oversaturated and a bit too overdone.
There are an extreme number of events that are popping up now, as we all know. And I do believe in a way this is good, and it's good to see people getting into the event scene as creators, and it's really good to see other people, starting out their work, because this could, as I said earlier, we got like 16, 17-year-olds, and they're looking for something to do in their free time, and it's something that's actually really healthy to get into development if you can. Maybe not to get addicted to development, but it is something that's pretty nice to be into. So this is, I think, good, but we are seeing a lot of events that seem to exist only for the sake of existing. And, well, I'm not going to name any specific events in particular, because I do believe that every event should be looked at a case-by-case basis if they were to be looked at. I do think that each event that you add saturates the market, and I think that we just do have far too many events right now, especially considering if you look at I believe it was the schedule that was posted about a Minecraft events, and I just see Saturday and Sunday or Friday as well, just full completely. It is a bit annoying as well to try to schedule players when there are 4 or 5 other events, and I guess there are the big 3 that people will try to work around, but even that's not reliable. And I just do think there are probably too many events right now, despite the fact that I do personally believe it is good to see other people getting into the development scene. I just do think that there are far too many events that are mostly the same from each other. But I don't really think it would be good for Minecraft events to merge, because I don't think that the development and the resources would work together in a way. But I'm kind of a bit worried that the Minecraft events kind of oversaturated might be hurting it a little bit, because there are just so many things that are the same. So I do believe it is oversaturated.
I think it is honestly a good thing that we're seeing a lot of newer events to an extent, and I do understand why we say that it's too much or that it's a lot. Because you do end up seeing a lot of the same thing. If I'll use the MCC formula, you see a lot of events that have quite a similar structure, where it's 8 games, final game, winner of those 2. I think what people are hoping for it's not to do with how many events there are. I think it's to do with how much of the same thing exists. But with that being said, like I said earlier, actually, you do see a lot of new things in the community. For example, Biome Battle introducing this whole seasons thing to events is a great way to add spice to events, and I think they're an amazing breath of fresh air to the event scene. And Pandora's Box Dragon Pit just happening, how different that was to the regular event that we'd see every Saturday, I think is great, which is the only reason why I wouldn't go and strongly agree.
Well, it is true that a lot of events nowadays just use the same games, have similar rosters, and overall very similar. I mean, every event I know uses the MCC formula of the 8 games, top 2 teams finale. I mean, maybe that's just because it's a really good formula, the best for content and shit. But while I do agree with it that the event scene has become oversaturated, if you don't like an event being unoriginal or just something like that, you don't have to support it. You don't have to think about it at all. You can just push it aside and think about the events that you actually like. And if you do like an event, you should absolutely support it, even if they have some unoriginal ideas. If you think that the event staff and their staff team can actually provide a decent experience, maybe it's not even the games that are the important thing for you. It could be the community that you enjoy. Even though the event scene is oversaturated, I don't think it matters, since people are still watching the events, people are still playing in the events, people are having fun in the events, people are having social situations and conversations with people through Minecraft events, so they're making friends, stuff like that. It doesn't matter that the event scene is overrated, I don't think.
I think it is great with the amount of events that there are in the space. I think what might lead to the idea of oversaturation right now is that they often feel very similar. In a video we put out on the MCC, the show channel, one of the last ones, we talked about the genre of MCC and how lots of events all follow the same format. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but I think the more creativity, the more you can make an event feel your own, the more it'll stand out from others and the less it'll feel then similar to the other events that are like it. I also think that events kind of wane of time. I got into Minecraft events and doing this kind of thing because of MCC, but I haven't watched an MCC in 2 years now. I've kind of fallen out of interest in it because it hasn't changed anything for at least my viewing experience. And I know that other people have said similar things, like they want more change, they want more cool, new, innovative things. And so I think the thing I would just advocate for across events and across the space is just do things that you think are cool, and they're cool because they're inspired by the things you're a fan of, but they're also derivative enough where you're putting your new, fresh ideas into them to create something even cooler than's already out there.
I think there's parts of the event scene that are oversaturated, and there's parts of the event scene that are undersaturated. To get more specific, the oversaturated part to me is events that are essentially trying to replicate the magic from some of the other like 8-game mini-game style events with a finale that you see everywhere. Obviously, I understand that a lot of these events are meant to be for a different audience than the major players in the scene. However, as you know, someone who is more at the top perspective, it does seem like it's just same old events and events that are just barely distinct from each other, which I think is the oversaturated part. However, undersaturated part is unique events. I think there's a lot of demand and a lot of want for stuff that is very different. And there's still a lot of room for events to actively happen, especially in terms of some of the more popular events. There's a lot of room in between events that could be filled up by other events that maybe offer something unique, whether it's something that isn't a minigame style event. Maybe it's a minigame style event with a whole different approach. Something like a buy-in battle comes to mind, where it feels fresh and it still keeps things active within the scene and kind of fills that gap that still does exist, which I think definitely could have a bit more supply in terms of events, which I think is the part that is undersaturated.
Once again, I'd like to preface this by saying I don't have a lot of event experience. Ironically, as I run an event, I've only really sort of learned about other events through running buy-in battle. And that's a really interesting position to have because I've sort of been introduced to the whole event scene in the sort of time span of half a year. I knew about 1 or 2 events going into it, and now I know about 10 or 20 sort of competitors, if you will. And I don't think it's oversaturated. I mentioned this before, but you'll find that the sort of people that say the event scene is oversaturated are the people who follow a lot of events. And there's a lot of good events around, don't get me wrong, but a lot of them are quite small. And when we're talking about the sort of event community, I would say the sort of couple big events, there's only a few couple big events. If there was about 5-6 massive events in the scene, yes, it would be oversaturated. But realistically, you've got about 3-4 big events and then about 20 sort of smaller mini events. And this isn't a bad thing, don't get me wrong. But I think a lot of the people who are saying the event scene is oversaturated have a lot of options and choice for them. Yeah, so from experience, there's a lot of smaller events, but from what I've heard, being the owner of Buy-in Battle, the stuff that we've been able to produce is quite abnormal. You don't really get a sort of event coming out of nothing and coming to like a medium to large size event in a short time span. And you'll find that a lot of the sort of big events at the moment have been around for a long time. And if I were to say it's oversaturated, once again, that would be lying. Because I think if it was oversaturated, there would be several big events and they'd all be competing for each other. I think right now it's quite a balanced community. I think every sort of event knows their space. They've got their own roster and there's very sort of little conflict between the rosters. And therefore each event can sort of live in its own sort of harmony, if you will. And I don't really think there's sort of any events right now that are competing for that space in the scene. And thus I don't think it's oversaturated. But I'm very interested to see how the event space is going to change in the next couple of years.